So welcome to AIP Open Seminar. First of all, here are some important notices about this seminar. Reproduction is forbidden. Reproducing all or any part of the contents is prohibited without the author's permission. This seminar will be recorded and the video will be available on the RIKEN AIP website later. If you have any questions or comments, please scroll to the bottom of the page and click the question and answer tab. You can put questions or comments in the box. But due to time limit, it can be possible that we can answer all questions. So let's begin Open Seminar. I'm Shoko Suzuki, team leader of the Artificial Intelligence Ethics and Society team. Today, I'm glad to share with you a part of my team's research. As the social implementation of artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things has begun, the dissemination of intelligence-related technologies has progressed further, and society is starting to change its appearance remarkably. In various fields related to our daily lives, such as transportation, finance, logistics, corporate management, medical care, and nursing care, and education. AI technology is built into the devices around us. As a system that functions via connection and cooperation rapidly forms, a period of change is coming that will affect the rules and values of society, as well as people's daily lives, including their working styles, lifestyles, and communication. In this situation where many expectations are accompanied by anxieties that cannot be hidden, one can also detect momentum for the large-scale social change that new AI technology brings. Against this backdrop, a proposed approach is that no matter how advanced AI technology becomes, its continued development should involve constant affirmation of the fact that AI technology is ultimately an undertaking intended to create a human-centered world. Today, I'd like to share with you how human life and humanity itself will change in the AI network society. In order to redefine humanity, we have to think about the situation in which human beings will collaborate with or be connected to AI and other advanced technologies, or even be transformed into a kind of cyborg by having AI technology attached to or embedded in their bodies. We have to think about the situation where we are transformed into a kind of cyborg. We also need to think about transhumanism. The question of artificial life and the transformation of our view of life and death will also be important issues. How far and to what extent can and should humans be enhanced by AI and other advanced technologies? The ethical boundaries about the appropriateness of enhancement will be important. I'd like to share these issues with you. Of course, it is said that as a result of starting to walk on 2 feet, human beings released their hands and brain to invent tools. In the early stages of human development, Humankind, like other animals, was in the natural environment, and through its interaction with this natural environment, humankind created a secondary environment, which can be referred to as a human and natural system or ecosystem. It is an accumulation of technologies. Ancient Greek said technai, in a broad sense, including knowledge, skills, and ways of using tools, and it can be regarded as a technological civilization in which a group of external mechanisms incorporating the accumulation of skill and experiences of technology and the mechanisms of transmission and transmission of technology constitutes a system. Humans build certain relationships with tools through the use of tools. The technique of using aids or instruments for supplementation and strengthening is cultivated through the relationship with the instruments, and humans use the instruments as if they were part of their own body. In order to utilize tools and machines, it is necessary to establish a collaborative system to understand the mechanisms necessary for them to function. In other words, the language of the tools and the machines. In this process, humans reconfigure their own abilities by acquiring the knowledge, skills, and the capacity to communicate with tools and machines. The more frequently used skills are then mastered through repetition, and the skills that are no longer used are often forgotten. In technological civilization, the reconfiguration of human abilities could be considered to constantly progress through the utilization of tools and machines that enable humans to extend their capabilities. Humans who are responsible for technological civilization do not choose their own techniques and skills, but rather are repeatedly responding to or incorporating requirements for civilization that is suited to the times. As technological civilizations continue to renew themselves, there will be a need for discussions that highlight the actual people experiencing constant change and transformation in the course of these developments. At the same time, human beings have acted on the natural environment while being influenced by it, and in the process of adaptation have created a technological civilization, also called the secondary environment, coming to be at the top of all other organisms. This also means that we should take responsibility, as we have the ability to determine the future of the global environment. It is important to build a human-centered world. However, questions about what it means to be human and how humans should live have always been asked repeatedly from the era of ancient Greece and ancient China to today. The question of how humankind should be viewed could be described as integral to the question of how humans should live in this world. Therefore, it is necessary to avoid selecting only limited examples of the various visions for humankind to date, considering them as obvious and indiscriminately, making them the fundamental premise for discussion. It is also necessary to avoid placing absolute faith in these models for humanity without fully considering their legitimacy. Humans have always maintained an attitude to questioning their own experience. That very attitude can be regarded as the essence of a human being. It is necessary for humans to control themselves so that certain fixed views and biased thoughts do not lead them to fall into the type of human-centered or human-oriented philosophy in which the superiority of humans alone is asserted, without regard for things that live all around in nature. It is necessary to constantly look back on the civilizations that have been built up by humans and the cultures that have been fostered in order to discourage ourselves from human arrogance. We need to reflect on our own deeds so that human behavior does not become the sort of human-centered human orientation that benefits only humankind. Incidentally, the culture created in conjunction with scientific and technological civilization is the broadest possible culture in terms of cultural anthropology, such as institutions, morals, and customs, including those affecting all areas related to value creation, as well as lifestyles. This is because the culture changes depending on the results of science and technology, and also affects the direction of scientific and technological progress. So, how can we make the best use of accumulated wisdom in the form of culture as a driving force for development through a well-balanced connection between the culture we have cultivated and new AI technology? The culture built up so far to be left behind as a resource is required to contribute to the design of future societies through AI technology. Meanwhile, strategies are necessary to position science and technology as cultures and as the forces that will shape a new stage of civilization for humankind. For example, attempting to construct a smart city that utilizes big data gives rise to the question of how to connect the social infrastructure, incorporating new information technology capabilities with the existing culture in the broad sense, including social organizations, institutions, community, networks, and the laws, economy, and values that have supported them. Science and technology have an interdependent relationship with culture in the sense that the new value created by science and technology connects to the existing culture through innovation, creating a new form of culture, while cultural needs may be the driving force for the development of new science and technology. As science and technology in the form of culture spread to human views, ideas, values, and lifestyles, a new technological civilization on a grand scale will be created. Envisaging a future for science and technology that accounts for the spatio-temporal scale of culture and civilization will be important in considering the significance and potential for survival of human beings themselves. Then, what is humanity? The intelligence that allows us to act in a human way. The word artificial intelligence, as we know it today, comes from the Dartmouth Summer Research Project on Artificial Intelligence, sometimes called the Dartmouth Conference, held at Dartmouth University in 1956, coined the term artificial intelligence, and sparked the beginning of research into AI. John McCarthy and the other researchers who took part regarded reasoning as the essence of the intelligence of AI as they understood the term. They found that the question, what is intelligence, could be answered in many and varied ways depending on the criteria for defining human intelligence. Even today, there is no consensus among researchers on a stable definition for the concept of AI. In general terms, it seems to be understood as the science and technology of creating intelligent machines, especially intelligent computer programs. To begin with, even disciplines such as philosophy, psychology, and neuroscience have not demarcated clear definitions of intelligence or intellect. If we assume that natural intelligence exists as opposed to artificial intelligence, we cannot state with certainty that this means human intelligence. If we consider the human condition, which entails learning by developing survival skills as we interact with our environment and accomplishing constant transformation. It is not easy to delineate between the end of natural intelligence and the beginning of artificial intelligence, incorporating acquired skills. However, AI has evolved despite this lingering vagueness, and research in the field has used the workings of the human brain as a conceptual model. This has taken the form of attempts to create computers that think like humans. A series of research projects in the 1960s built the foundations for today's AI research, including logical neural models, which became the basis of neural network research, programming languages, autonomous mobile robots, and natural language dialogue systems. We need to think about, again, human intelligence in terms of artificial intelligence. In other words, we need to contrast the machine of artificial intelligence with the human being of natural intelligence in order to highlight the characteristics of human nature. In this way, from the point of view of the study of artificial intelligence, we may be able to see the state of intelligence that is difficult to understand, or in other words, the state of human intelligence, which can be called the last bastion of humanity. It is difficult to fully elucidate these human capabilities, and intelligences with the Western dualism that distinguishes between mind and body, and that the mind or spirit controls the body. It is necessary to go back to the starting point that man, as a living organism, lives in a state of unity of body and mind. It is also necessary to pay attention to the functioning of other kinds of knowledge, such as body knowledge and tacit knowledge, which have been neglected in studies of intelligence that focus on reason and enlightenment. Since the 2000s, there has been a movement of intelligence research focusing on tacit knowledge, mainly in Europe. This is a so-called tacit turn. In this trend, I have been conducting research on intelligence, paying particular attention to tactical intelligence, TACT. I would like to introduce some of my research on tactical intelligence, but not today, perhaps at the next time of this open seminar. I believe that by considering tactical intelligence as another kind of knowledge, we can shed light on human intelligence, which has so far remained unacceptable to the rationalist view. This is in German Enlightenment, rationality is the important nature of humans, so defined. I also believe that we can contrast the basis of AI ethics, that is ethics of ethics. It means meta-ethics and the human way of living from tactical intelligence. So let's return to today's theme. To promote the task of redefining human nature, I tell you how the natural intelligence of human beings can transform by digitalization. The human capacity to adapt to the digital world is undergoing a profound change. Today, I talk about human capabilities in two areas: memory functions and emotional intelligence. As you can see in this slide, the rapid development of the memory function through digitalization changes society and people. A long time ago, everyone could recite a poem by their favorite poet or a passage from a novel by a writer. A civilization or a culture is, in a sense, the basis of the culture shared by the people of that civilization or culture, and it has the function of being the basis of judgment, of thinking, of making difficult decisions in critical situations. Collective intelligence is the original meaning of culture, which has been cultivated and constantly updated. In updating, collective memory has played a role in which people all know each other. However, as digitalization progresses, the memory function is sufficient to be stored in devices such as storage media, USB, or hard memory. Today, we can store our information in collective intelligence as encyclopedias on the web. It is no longer necessary to have all this knowledge in your mind, in your head, because you can access the collective intelligence on the web and retrieve the information whenever you need it. In this context, what changes are likely to occur in the human capacity to externalize memory functions? The future of human intellectual activity in the form of on-demand access to collective intelligence and the sharing of information is the same linked to the shift from an ownership economy to a sharing economy. It is a shift from owning information and knowledge to sharing information and knowledge from time to time. It means that we can save a lot of energy by combining and organizing information, applying our thinking, and making decisions. In addition, through big data analysis, it will become possible to choose one of several possibilities, thus eliminating the need to go through various factors and possibilities by oneself. You don't have to go through all the possible cases yourself. As long as there is no doubt about the well-defined framework of correlations and tendencies, we only have to make multiple choices within it. This externalization of the memory function and the improvement of the predictive function based on correlations will free man from the difficulties of remembering and anxieties and the stress of making decisions on his own. Skills and abilities are improved and refined through repeated use. On the other hand, skills and abilities that are no longer used will diminish. What problems does this pose for the next generation of human beings? First of all, if memory decline links its recall. The function of memorizing and its recall is the side of the coin. The brain stores in the memory to recall in the future in a similar situation. This set of memory and its recall is necessary for the accumulation of experimental knowledge. Experience is meaningful to us not only because of what we have experienced, but also because of how we have experienced it. What and how we experienced in the context and the situation. How we then feel all are all stretched together. They are the essential elements in the memory frame of our life story. These memories are then customized and recalled as necessary to suit the coming situation. It is a process of transforming the quantity of experience into quality. In this process, physical and tacit knowledge is cultivating. How to do things in our daily lives, so-called practical knowledge, is polishing through this complex process. How to do things in our daily lives, so-called practical knowledge, is polishing through this complex process. Our challenge is to stop the weakening of the human capacity to learn from experience. It is the same to predict the future, just as our memories or our information about the past are customized to suit future circumstances. The same is true of our ability to predict the future, make decisions, and so on. It is the basis of learning to accumulate in ourselves experiences of surprise, joy, hurt, and so on, through encounters with unexpected situations and unexpected things, and to remember them and use them in different situations. It is a basis of learning. In words of ancient Greek, patemata matemata. Patemata matemata. It means he or she who suffers, he or she learns. Furthermore, in this age of rapid digitalization, research is underway to equip artificial intelligence with human emotional functions as programs. Underlying the development of such human-friendly robots and human-like robots is the idea that it is possible to facilitate the interface between humans and machines by enabling AI-equipped robots to perform as if they were equipped with emotions. In this way, emotions act as an interchangeable means of betokening communications that is formed by the robots performing as if they had emotions. This condition can be called emotional functionalism. In the service sector, when providing services to others or responding to customer complaints, it is important to satisfy emotional needs and not to hurt customers' feelings. Emotion is an important factor in the service industry as it has commercial value. The job of service professionals is to communicate throughout the day in a way that is designed to quell negative customer feelings by responding kindly and sincerely to customer dissatisfaction, dissatisfactions and complaints. To do this, people need to be trained professionally in the techniques used to control emotions and ensure that no further harm is done to customers' feelings. Emotion has become a communication tool and a manipulated skill. This kind of work is called emotional labor. However, if we review the communication of modern people, including not only the work of customer complaints, clerks, but also family and workplace relationships, we can realize how much we are dealing with in human relationships by using certain types of emotional expression and incorporating communication methods into our emotional patterns. In family relationships, there are quite a few people who repeatedly perform a kind of emotional labor. If we understand that love is an emotion, it is not possible to actually see how much another person loves you. The depth of love cannot be visualized in everyday life by scientific methods. Without scientific evidence, we understand relationships through trust or the assumption that the another person probably likes us. When that relationship is shaken, you feel anxious for reassurance that the other person loves you. In the same way that the death of a pet can cause psychological despondency stemming from feelings of loss that results from pet dependence, that is no denying that the society of the future we'll see an increase in symptoms of dependence on robots equipped with AI. As we have seen, there are some ways in which AI technology is to improve human performance, from working with AI-equipped robots to AI-embedded devices worn like prostheses, and even microchips implanted in the body. There are many ways in which AI technology is to improve human performance. Les Carwile, who predicted a technological singularity in 2025, envisaged a life of immortality with an AI chip inside. The desire to emphasize human beings, improve performance, and achieve long life is ancient, and no shortage of science fiction films focus on the insatiable desire to create artificial humans and the fate that awaits them. To a certain extent, we may no longer be able to stop humanity from moving towards a post-human or cyborg dimension. However, it is also clear that we must continue to think about controlling human desires as we develop AI technology. So I'd like to consider the collaboration and coexistence with AI from the perspective of enhancement. First of all, what is enhancement? Enhancement means working with our natural state to improve, enhance, or strengthen its function. In bioethics and medicine, this has included enhancement through medication, prostheses, and artificial limbs. In recent years, however, the concept of self-medication, that is, by taking supplements or preventing illness, has become more widespread. Medical treatment and diagnosis are no longer confined to the confines of hospital buildings, but are now part of the social services provided to all members of society. In thinking about enhancement with AI technology, the debate in the healthcare sector is very instructive. In the discussion about enhancement nowadays, we find the following perspectives. First, is the enhancement consistent with the challenges and goals of medicine and healthcare, namely the restoration and maintenance of health? Secondly, is the enhancement ethically justifiable? Justice, equality of opportunity, personhood, dignity. There are many things to consider about the appropriateness of enhancement, such as the boundary between plastic surgery and cosmetic surgery, between taking medication to improve a condition that may be socially disadvantageous for schooling, and taking medication as a supplement to concentrate on learning. Thus, we need to examine the extent to which interventions in the natural state of humans to improve human performance are permissible, and the LC of AI must be certified in combination with these discussions of bioethics and medical ethics. Finally, some meaningful points for the discussion of enhancement are: it is appropriate to intervene in the natural nature of man. It is a fundamental philosophical and ethical question. To what extent is it permissible to manipulate human nature? Is it valuable here to consider the natural state of man? Is it acceptable to enhance a person so much that man becomes too improved that his original identity is lost? Is it possible to provide a service that respects the will of the stakeholders as much as possible? Stakeholders are the people who will benefit from AI and medical services, or in other words, the people who will make use of AI and medical technologies. If we think of it as an economic activity, it may be logical to provide services to stakeholders as long as they recognize the need for them. However, there is a need to examine what and how much is correct for human life. The extent of the responsibility of service providers, doctors, teachers, etc., is also a question. There is no limit to human desire. Just as a thirsty person drinks sea water, we have to control our desires by various social stimuli and the desire to buy. How to control it, our desires, is not only a question of AI ethics and medical ethics, but also of the ethics of ethics, so-called meta-ethics, in the sense of the way of the human being. As a meta-ethic, it is necessary to constantly ask questions about the ethics of human life, also concerning the LC of AI. To do this, I think it is significant to try to set more opportunities for discussion to raise the quality of questions. I think AI is the mirror of humanity or quality of humanity. We have to see the mirrors as AI, and we know how we live, what kind of capabilities we have, and what direction we have to go. So thinking about ourselves in the mirror of our figures. So thank you so much. And I like to I will come back here, question and answer the end of this open seminar. And I like to button touch to Dr. Fujiwara. Dr. Fujiwara, could you please?
Then shall we begin? Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure for me to have such a precious opportunity to join you on this online seminar. My name is Hironobu Fujiwara in this team, and currently working with Dr. Suzuki in these 3 years. And today I will introduce 3 papers of mine in relation to artificial intelligence technique. My papers are not always related to AI technology directly, but I will focus on the topics of internet use and digital multitasking, which would be background of AI usage. The first one is a neuroimaging study about neural correlates of internet use. And the second one is a questionnaire survey of internet use in medical residents, because I was working as a medical educators in Kyoto University Hospital starting 2013 to 19. And finally, I will introduce the third one, which is a neuroimaging study regarding media multitasking. I will introduce myself briefly. My background is a psychiatrist, keep engaging in clinical issues as well as medical research of mental health, mainly neuroimaging studies of schizophrenia and addictive problems. As I introduced earlier, starting 2013, I joined in the field of medical education, especially dealing with mental care for young medical students and residents. So in this period, I couldn't always focus on research, but starting 2019, I came back to psychiatric field. Then I'm focusing on the research once again. And finally, in personal, I am a martial arts kendo player. So therefore, the health benefits of physical exercises are also one of my interests as well, considering the addictive tendency to exercises at the same time. In my team, we are currently investigating the relationship between life habits, such as today's main concern, the recent one, internet use, digital multitasking, and mental health from the perspective of behavioral addiction. Today's outline, as I explained earlier, one is subclinical level internet use among healthy subjects, a neuroimaging study in the motivation network. And the second one is mental health survey of medical residents. It is not the neuroimaging study. And the third one is the relationship between media multitasking and functional connectivity in the dorsal attention network. In brief, the relationship between media multitasking and attention function using MRI scanning. The backbone of my working hypothesis is a reward deficiency syndrome. People who are prone to addiction have tendency in recruiting reward and motivational circuitry among the brain. Although the reward deficiency hypothesis is likely to be true across addictions, including substance abuse and behavior addiction, here a simple question is whether it is generalized to non-problematic behavioral habits. Whether it is generalized to non-problematic low level of behavioral habits. Excessive internet use would be associated with dysfunctions of mesolimbic pathways and the cortical regions within the reward system. Very roughly, these figures indicative that the higher sorry, higher, the higher the internet use, the lower the brain function in the reward system, suggested by these negative correlation between internet use and the brain function. These different three brain imaging modalities, that is positron emission tomography, focusing on dopamine 2 receptor availability, and resting state fMRI, and also structural connectivity mapped by diffusion tensor imaging technique. Our research question was whether non-problematic common level of internet use is toxic or not for mental health. More specifically, we wanted to know whether there could be an optimized point of internet use for health benefits as far as the level is low to intermediate. In this study, the interest of the network, sorry, not working well, but anyway, let's continue. In this study, the interest of the network was the motivation network, which is closely and widely overlapped with the reward system. The region of interest of the network consists of 22 brain regions. We investigated the relationship between non-problematic internet use and the functional connectivity in the motivation network using resting state fMRI. We performed resting state fMRI in over 100 healthy volunteers. As for questionnaires for internet use, the degree of internet use was assessed using generalized problematic internet use 2, GPIUS2 scale, consists of 15 questions. And also depression and autistic traits were measured because evidence suggests that comorbid disorders such as depression and autism would affect the degree of internet use. Functional connectivity analysis were conducted with using CON software. It is the most common one currently. Furthermore, mediation analysis were performed to check the influences on depression and autistic traits as mediators on the relationship between internet use and the functional connectivities. Demographic data are as follows. In brief, the scores of internet use were relatively low. Depression and autistic traits were within subclinical levels as well, because the participants of this survey are all healthy volunteers. The results very briefly, these red colored connections mean positive correlations. Positive correlations between GPIS2 and the functional connectivities in combination with two regions within the motivation network during the resting state. In mediation analysis, autistic questionnaire was correlated with GPIS2 positively, whereas with functional connectivities negatively. The mediation analysis revealed that AQ, that is autistic traits, mediate the association between internet use and functional connectivities in in negative sense. It's a little bit complex to explain, but affect negatively on this favorable association. Discussion. Although positive correlation between internet use and functional connectivity might be interpreted as hyperactive networking, it would also indicate health benefits of the internet use. Of course, as far as not excessive. This tentative interpretation should be investigated from many perspectives in the future. Additionally, this possible favorable association is attenuated in individuals with relatively higher autistic traits, indicating the importance of personalized educational approaches in establishing their adequate internet use literacy, for example, in primary school or junior highs. Next, I will introduce the second one, the internet use in medical residents, a questionnaire survey. Adequate internet use and related mental health of medical residents are important for successful learning and clinical practice. Residents tend to exhibit mental health problems, typically depression and anxiety. Mental health problems may also lead to lapses of professionalism. We investigated mental health problems of residents and their associations with internet use. The data were collected twice at baseline, that is just before starting their residency, and 3 months later, when the risks of mental health problems in residency is the highest during 2 years in Japan. The details in methods are like this. General anxiety, depression, and self-esteem were measured for mental health assessment. As for internet use, GPIUS2 were also applied. As I explained earlier, GPIUS2 consists of 15 questions, and also have 5 subscales named preference for online social interaction rather than face-to-face communication, and mood regulation, the usage for their own mood regulation, and self-dysregulation for internet use, and negative outcomes as a result of excessive internet use. As a result, anxiety, depression, self-esteem, and internet use were within low to intermediate levels. But as for internet use, the scores is relatively higher. Regarding the group differences of each scale, main effects of group were found in general health, depression, self-esteem, and internet GPIUS to total scores and preference for social interaction subscale. These group effects indicated that higher anxiety, depression, and internet use, and lower self-esteem in residents with mental health problems. Post hoc tests revealed that higher depression and lower self-esteem at both time 1 and time 2, Higher general anxiety and GPIS to POSI, that is preference for social interaction, at time 2, as circled in red. Like this. As for correlations, significant correlations were found between GPIS2 and other variables in group M, that is, residents with mental health problems, like this. Particularly among these correlations, those between GPIUS2 mood at T1 and depression at T2, and PHQ at depression at T1 and GPIS2 POSI at T2 were important to think about the causal relationship between internet use and mental health. Discussion. First, higher GPIUS2 in residents with mental health problems suggests that the internet use is considered to be an up-to-date index for detecting mental health problems. That means just measuring the degree of internet use would be an indicator for future mental health problems in residents. And second, the measurement of residents' mental health problems by attempting to improve their depression and self-esteem indirectly to regulate internet use. Third, as for causal relationship between internet use and mental health, higher preference for online social interaction at baseline indicate that internet use may predict the later emergence of mental health problems. However, a correlation between the depression at baseline and preference for online social interaction at T2 indicate the inverse direction. Therefore, the result should be considered a tentative one. We think about this result carefully. Finally, it is still unclear whether the higher internet use is addictive or a compensatory coping reaction that has mental health benefits. Summary of these two papers about internet use. The reward deficiencies hypothesis would not always fully fit for the explanation for subclinical level internet use. Internet use would be useful for mental health management as one of the common interventional life habits. Future studies would be needed recruiting heavy users as well as common level users. And the research should be done in a longitudinal design. And we have to consider the difference in purpose of internet use and the usage of their own gadgets and so on. That is, we always face to the online situation using for business, using for shopping, and using for SNS and some sort of other different kind of purposes. So we have to think about these variations carefully in the future. Anyway, this simple figure indicates that is what I'd like to express in this presentation. We are supposing the optimized point would be present regardless of the kinds of life habits, including internet use and gadgets. And finally, but not least, I will introduce the paper regarding the neural correlates of media multitasking, published last year. The relationship between media multitasking and the attention function using MRI. The main focus life habit of the study is media multitasking using different kinds of digital gadgets, TVs, radios, and so on. As for the influences of media multitasking on attention, negative effects have been suggested in case the level is heavy and severe. However, it is still unclear whether low to intermediate level of multitasking has negative effects on cognition or not. In this study, we investigated the neural correlates of media multitasking in attention using a functional connective analysis of fMRI. The number of the subjects was over 103%. The degree of multitasking was measured by a questionnaire named MMI. Resting and task, that is attentional paradigm, resting state fMRI and task fMRI and the auditory audible paradigm were performed. The auditory paradigm is one of the most common paradigms which can assess the attention function. Very simple paradigm. The imaging parameters were as follows. The dorsal attention network consists of 20 regions of interest, and the other parameters is very common. In this study, we applied the graph theory analysis in functional fMRI analysis. The index of functional connectivity was decreased centrality, that is, the number of functional connectivities based on this graph theory. It is a little bit hard for me to explain this theory precisely, but very roughly, here we assessed the number of functional connectivities in some particular brain areas. And the larger the number of DC, the tighter the connectivity. As a result, the average score of MMI was low to intermediate levels compared to other previous studies. Degree centrality, DCs, during attention task was lower than those during resting states. The result was a little bit unexpected even for me, because intuitively, the functional connectivity must be greater under the paradigm. But Dr. Tomasi et al. And some other researchers reported that the degree centrality, the functional connectivity must be decreased if the paradigm is very simple and easy for humans. In this context, in this study, we used auditory audible paradigm that is very simple attentional task. So this would be the reason why DC's was decreased, DC decreased under audible paradigm compared to resting state. Regarding correlational analysis between multitasking and DCs, MMI score was positively correlated with degree centralities during the audible paradigm. That is, the larger the degree of media multitasking, the smaller the change of functional connectivity. Discussion. The main results are summarized into 2 points very roughly. That is, 1, decreased degree centrality during audible task and a positive correlation between media multitasking and functional connectivity during audible task. These results indicate that higher multitasking tendency means smaller reduction of DC, and it would be interpreted as more stable DC in individuals with relatively higher MMI tendency. Dr. Schultz et al. Reported that smaller differences in functional connectivity was associated with better task performance in these different cognitive tasks. And also, as I introduced earlier, Dr. Tomasi et al. Found that during a simple cognitive task, the functional connectivity density, which is similar to degree centrality in our study, was significantly lower than that during resting state in the visual, auditory, language, somewhat sensory, and the motor and premotor cortex. Therefore, smaller degree centrality changes in high MMI subjects might be functionally suitable and efficient in cognitive processing. Here, at this point, one question would be how the level of media multitasking influences on cognitive performance. One study has reported that intermediate multitaskers, that is the middle one, have the best performance on attention tasks, that is shorter reaction time with less answer error. This study indicates that the relationship between media multitasking and attention can be modeled with an inverted U-shaped curve like this. Thus, our results could indicate that higher DC in intermediate multitaskers result in better attention performance, which is correspond to the results of internet use neuroimaging study I introduced at the beginning of this seminar. More specifically, in other words, we think this an optimized point of the behavior would be present in media multitasking as well as internet use. And also, I would like to just to confirm that the media multitasking level in our study sample was low to intermediate level. In conclusion, topological properties of the dorsal attention network could be a brain biomarker of media multitasking behavior. And summary and the future direction from the perspective of these three papers results. Positive health benefits of low to intermediate level internet use and multitasking were introduced. However, causal relationship between these habitual behaviors and brain is still unknown, still unclear. Longitudinal study recruiting heavy users as well as low to intermediate users would be needed to clarify this point in the future. Okay, thank you very much for your attention. And I'm currently investigating various kinds of life habits, including exercise and the enhancement introduced by Dr. Suzuki by excessive supplement use and so on. And please welcome to contact me if you have these presentations were of interest for you. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much, Dr. Fujiwara. Yes, I see one question from Ms. Alexandra Wolf for you, I think. Dr. Fujiwara.
Okay, I will check. Let me check. Okay, I will read it for you, all of the audience. From Dr. Alexandra Wolf. Thank you for your presentation. You presented the comparison between healthy controls and the patients regarding internet use. Please allow me to ask if you recorded any difference in internet use between patients with different mental disorder conditions, for example, schizophrenia, anxiety, bipolar disorders, and so on. Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Wolf. Today's presentation is regarding the variations among healthy controls, healthy volunteers in general. So from these papers, I cannot answer to your question, but in general, as I explained a little bit earlier, the excessive internet use seems to comorbid many mental disorders, typically depression and some sort of anxiety disorders and autism, as I explained a little bit. So if the level of internet use is excessive, the brain function seems to be disordered in general. But I cannot find any robust evidence regarding the internet use in schizophrenia and so on. But very roughly, anxiety people with anxiety, depression, and some and autistic traits in a higher level, the brain function seems to be decreased in some poorer brain regions. And the internet use seems to be excessive. Does it make sense, Dr. Broff? Okay, Dr. Broff texted me that he roughly accepted and understood my answer. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Dr. Fujiwara. And we have 35 minutes, and I would like to the part of English lessons, and another 30 minutes are short version of a Japanese presentation I'd like to share with the people. Is it okay? So this is the end of the English part. And thank you very much for joining us today. We will see you again at the next seminar. それでは、残りの時間を使いまして、日本語による、サマリーと、少し、藤原ドクター藤原と少しディスカッションのような形で、提示させていただきたいというふうに思っております。それでは藤原先生、10分ぐらいで、日本語のサマリーっていう感じでお願いすることは可能でしょうか。
はい、了解しました。
はい。
日本語の方が得意ですので、多分できると思います。皆様、今日は拙い英語で失礼いたしました。本日の私のプレゼンテーションの要旨としましては、3つの今、僕と一緒に若手等とやっております研究成果、3つの論文を主に紹介させていただいたということでして、インターネットの使用ですね、それからいろんなデジタルメディアガジェットの、によるマルチタスキングですね。今日ご参加の皆様の中でも、今、これを見ながら、携帯でちょっとなんかメールが来たのが気になったりとかっていう方、少なからずおられるんじゃないかと思うんですけれども、そういったメディアのマルチタスキングに関する脳画像研究、およびいわゆるアンケート研究を紹介させていただきました。それでいずれもこれ、AI そのものとは関係ないんですが、ただその AI のネットワーク化社会の中で、これからどんどん横の糸で AI がつながり始めたりする中で、もしも人間ではアルゴリズムがなかなか追えないようなディープラーニングが進んでいったりというふうなことがあり得ると。で、その前提になるのがやっぱりこのオンライン環境ということで、それは今よく叫ばれております、例えばスマートシティ構想であるとか、スーパーシティ構想に関しても、まずこのオンライン環境とどういうふうに付き合っていくかということが前提にあるということで、 このAI との関連を踏まえて、関連を踏まえてまではお話できてませんけれども、そういうことで発表させていただきました。で、いずれもですね、病的なヘビーユーザーを扱った研究ではございませんで、広く無作為に、およそ3桁の被験者の方にご協力いただいたばらつきを見てみたところ、目的としてもそうでしたし、結果的にはそうだったんですが、ひどいヘビーユーザーというのはいなかった中での、低レベルから中程度レベル、ざっくり申し上げますと、おおむね我々レベルのということで代替させていただきますけれども、我々レベルのユーザーの脳がどうかということを、脳内報酬系という依存症で非常によく言われることの多い神経基盤を仮説としまして、でそれと非常に大きくオーバーラップしているモチベーションですね、動機づけに関するネットワークについて調べたのが最初の研究でございます。で結果、中ぐらい未満であれば、このモチベーションネットワークとの相関が正の相関だったということで、それだけ脳の中のコネクティビティがよくつながっているというふうな結果を得ましたので、ほどほどレベルのインターネットの使用であれば、モチベーションという、認知機能を、活性化するのではないかというふうな解釈を与えております。ただし、ここには慎重な姿勢が必要でして、これがなおも依存症の入り口なのかどうなのかというのを横断研究として調べただけでは確たることは言えないということがございまして、それを解決するためには、今後、刑事的、縦断的研究とともに、ヘビーユーザーとそうでないユーザーというのを同じパラダイムのもと、同じ解析で測ってみるという必要があろうということでございます。でこのあえても好ましいというふうに分かりよくちょっと言わせていただきますけれども、好ましいこの、そこそこのネットの使い方とモチベーションネットワークの活性化という関係が、自閉傾向がある方だと非常にこれが損なわれるというふうな結果を得ましたので、潜在的に自閉傾向を持つ子どもたちが、一定のばらつきを持って学童等にいると想定した場合にですね、それでは、早くからこれは啓発活動として、むしろ良いリテラシーを学校教育等で示していくのがいいんじゃないかというふうなことを、モデストながらも提言したいなというところでございます。先ほどブルフ先生からもご質問いただきましたけれども、明らかにクリニカルなレベルの精神疾患であれば、ネットの使い方も過剰であるというふうなことは、特にうつ病、不安障害、それからこの自閉スペクトラム症ではたくさんのエビデンスがございますけれども、これが健常者というレベルでばらつきを見た場合には、今申し上げたような結果だったというふうなことであります。で次に簡単にいきますが、メディカルレジデンス、いわゆるその初期以下研修医ですね、いわゆる研修医の人たちがこの非常にストレスフルな、仕事であるということもありまして、このメンタルヘルス管理というのは非常に問題には、実は医療界ではなっているんですけれども、これナースの方なんかにも当てはまると思います。でですね、この初期研修医でインターネットの使い方と抑うつ傾向等を調べたところ、2年間の初期研修の中で、うつ、不安、不眠等で何らかの介入を要するような事案化した方というのは、インターネットの使い方が、程度が高かったということであります。でそうしたときに、今はこれ現在の本邦のカルチャーの問題ということもあるかと思うんですが、いまだそのメンタルの問題ということで、直接的に話題として取り上げて介入するということに、どうしてもその後ろめたさ、いわゆるそのスティグマ等がつきものであるということが多少なりとも以前と比べて軽減したとはいえやっぱりございまして、ただそういう時にですね、メンタルヘルスの管理上ですね、インターネットとか夜中にやりすぎてないかなというふうな介入だったら、より分かりよく、より介入する側の教育者にとってもストレス少なく介入できる方法じゃないかなと。 そういうことを提言できたのかなと、提示できたのかなというふうに解釈しております。で、3つ目は、同じようなロジックですけれども、デジタルメディアタスキングとその注意力の関係を、その神経基盤ということも踏まえて脳画像研究で調べたんですけれども、やはり中ぐらい未満のマルチタスクの程度であれば、ごくごく簡単に申し上げますと、脳トレ的に働いているということであります。アテンションの注意の機能としては、どうも高まるようで安定化する方向にあるようだと。つまりある程度でマルチタスキングをしている方が日々脳トレになっているので、その脳のネットワークが効率化されているというふうなイメージで解釈を与えております。ということですので、中から低いレベルから中程度未満であれば、脳のトレーニング的に働く可能性もあるんじゃないかということを、控えめながらも提示しつつ、ただ明らかにこれが過剰になれば、有害事象が出てくるということは、もうこれはもう山のように言われていることですので、その最も良い付き合い方というのがどこかということが、ひいては今後の AI 社会で AI とどう付き合うのが最もちょうど良いかということのブリッジングがある程度必要にしても、そのヒントになればという思いで話をさせていただきました。以上です。
ありがとうございました。私どものチームの藤原博士は主にメンタルヘルスという関係から人間と、デジタライゼーションの間の、関係をどのように適正に保持し、あるいは支援していくことができるかという、そういうところで、実際に研究を進めていっていただいているわけですけれども、この他にも、法の観点からそれからスマートシティなどの社会を構築していく上で人間の、人間性あるいは人間らしさといったものが、どのように、変わっていくのか、どこまでが保持可能でどこまでがもう新しい人間になっていかざるを得ないのかというその境目の問題を、一緒に、共通して考えているということでございます。で、私が今日お話しさせていただいた内容は、その概略部分にあたると言っていいかと思います。特にその AI 技術、AI に代表されるような技術というものが、それだけが突出したものであるというふうに捉える、そういう視点では非常に近視眼的であって、もうちょっと広い文明史というシビライゼーションの観点から、技術文明の観点から AI 技術というものを考えていくという、そういう観点が重要ではないかというのが、私どもの、チームの基本的な立場であります。そのように考えてきますと、私どもは二足歩行し、そして道具を発見し、言語を発見するという形で、さまざまなその、環境適応と、それからその技術や技能というものを獲得することを通して、環境自体を自分に変えていくことができる。自分が適応しやすいように変えていくことができるという具合に、環境との相互作用の中で、実は環境を形作っていくってことができる。これが、人間が他の生き物とは、違う、技能を持っている。それこそがまさにその他の、生物とは違う点なんだわけなんですけれども、じゃあその時に人類っていうのは、全ての生き物に対して、ある種地球上の全ての生き物に対して何らかの責任を持つ存在として考えていかなければならないことがたくさんあるんではないか。その観点から AI の技術の進展、あるいはどのように進展させていくかということも含めて、考えていく必要があるんではないかというふうに思っています。その意味で、人間っていうのは環境に適応させ、新たな環境を作っていく。これがまさにですね、系統発生を繰り返す必要がなくて、ある種文化文明として蓄積し、直接それを第二次環境として伝達していくことが可能だという、そういう状況の中で技術文明っていうのが発展してきた。 というふうに考えますと、AI も技術文明の一環として捉えることで、さて何が見えてくるのか。ここで重要になってくるのが、先ほどは藤原、博士は、主にそのメンタルヘルスのところでほどほどという、このほどほどに活用している、利活用していくという、そのほどほどをどのように見極めていくかという、これはおっしゃっておられたようにリテラシーの問題でもあるかもしれないんですが、ある意味このほどほどさっていうのは社会が決めていってる部分がある。で、多分一世代前の人のほどほどのラインと、これから、デジタルネイティブと言われる人たちが、考えるほどほどは微妙にずれているという、このずれているところを我々は定点観測していく必要があるだろうと思います。その意味で、定点観測的に継続的に、データを取っていくことも重要ですし、で人間の技能や能力っていうのはそれを使ってるとどんどん磨かれていくんですが、使わないでいるとどんどん忘れてってしまうという、そういう悲しい差がを持っております。ですから、使わなくなった技能や技術というものがいつの間にか忘れられていっているということ、これをもうちょっと私たちは自覚的に知っておくっていう、そういうことが必要になってくるだろうと思います。ましてや現在のそのデジタライゼーションの中では、電源というもの、電気によって動いているということが大前提ですので、それが何らかのアクシデントによって電気が供給できないような状況になった時に、デジタル化が徹底的に進んでしまった時に、それをどうしたらいいか。電気なしでも作動するような社会のシステムっていうものを考えていく。あるいは私どもがデジタル化、あるいは AI 化によってどんどん忘れていってしまっている能力や技能というもので、我々の生存にとって必要なものっていうのは、どのように保存、保持していっておく必要があるのか。こういう問題も技術文明として AI を捉えていく中で重要になってくるところかと思います。で、今日は人間の人間らしさっていうのを考えていこうと。で、人間らしさは、永遠ですって本当は言いたいんですけれども、実際ポストヒューマンやトランスヒューマンという、そういう言葉がよく出てくるほどに、人間の人間らしさっていうのは、過去においても、実は動物と違う人間。今は機械と違う人間という具合に、動物や機械と境界線を引くという、そういう作業をする中で人間らしさというのをその都度定義してまいりました。そうしますと、人間らしさというのは絶対的にあるものではなくて、その時に、まさに、労働、生産社会の中で、一定の貢献をすることができる、身体を持った人間というものが、その、近代的な社会であれば、近代的な社会を維持、推進していくために必要な人間のモデルというものを考えたというのと同じように、人間らしさというものは時代によってその都度定義づけられてきていると見ることもできます。今日挙げさせていただきましたのは、記憶とそれから感情知性の問題でした。で、記憶っていうのはこれまさにその想起するですね。例えば、お母さんの味とかお母さんが、歌っていた子守歌、そういったものは体の奥底に沈潜しています。このような記憶というものをある時の何かの刺激によってふっと思い出すという、体の奥底に沈潜しているほどほど感であったり、居心地の良さであったり、そういった記憶というものを思い出すということとセットになって、私どもは人生の物語を紡いでいます。これがですね、記憶はストレージして USB で、あるいは、ウェブ上に、辞典のように、そこの集合知性っていうところに、保管してもらえれば、私自身がいちいち、頭に留めておく、心に留めておくということが必要なくなってくる。そういう時代に突入しようとしていますが、そういう中で、確かに集合知性と言われるものに 必要があるときにオンデマンドしてアクセスして情報としてゲットすることはできるかもしれませんが、私の体をくぐらせた体験として、記憶として体の中に沈潜させていくという、この記憶ということをしなくなるということは、逆に考えてみますと、それを思い出すということもできなくなっていく。実はこの思い出す、その時その時に私の心の中に残っている記憶というものを引き出してきて、そしてそれをこれからの私、目の前の現実、そういうものに役立てていくというのが経験というものの働きです。何を経験するかも大事ですが、どのように経験したかということも人間にとっては大きな意味を持っています。このように記憶というものっていうのは早期と一体化したものであるということを考えますと、記憶と早期というものがこれからますます衰えていったときに、実は人間の創造性であったり、それからかすかな記憶の中にある居心地の良さであったり、ほどほどであったり、こういったものっていうのが弱体化していくという、そういう危険もあるかと思われます。もう一点の触覚知性の部分ですけれども、この触覚知性に関わるのは、そこから感情知性という方に今日は焦点を当てました。感情労働。私どもは、対人間のサービス業の領域では、顧客の苦情に対して、いつでも心地よくその苦情に対応することができるような、そういったサービス業の分野で、人との関わりで常に感情を安定させておかなければいけない。そういう職種が非常に現代では増えてきています。そうなってきますと、自分の感情を押し殺し、心地よい感情をサービスとして提供していくということに徹していくと、まさに感情というのは貨幣のようにトークンとして、交換可能なものになっていきます。こういった類の、サービス業に関わる人たちの、労働のことを感情労働、エモーショナルレイバーという言い方を、する社会学者もいます。そうなってきますと、どうやら感情っていうのは、本当にこう、あるかないかということは見えないわけですね。あの人は私のことを愛してくれているのか、私はあの人は愛しているのかと言っても、愛というものは、はい、ここにありますという具合に、実際に測定したり、目に見える形で指し示すことはできない。でも、詩であったり、短歌であったり、小説であったり、そういうものの中で暗示することはできます。しかし、それはエビデンスとして科学的なエビデンスのように証明することはできない。しかし、私たちは思いを託したり、そしたり、あるいはその愛があるかもしれないという愛を託すとか、愛があると信ずることができるという、こういう形で、感情というものを媒介とさせた集団を構築しているわけですが、それはもう証明できないんだから、だからロボットと同じようにですね、感情自体がないけれども、その感情があるかのように振る舞うという形で、その場をしのいでコミュニケーションをうまくやり過ごすといったような、そういった、社会的な適応の技法のようなものも、身につけなければいけない社会になりつつあります。そうなってくると、感情労働の社会となってくると、自分が職場にいる時だけではなくて、家に帰ってもですね、子供に対して、あるいは、家族全体に対してですね、感情労働して何とかやり過ごしているという、そういう人も出てきてしまう。このあたりからきっとメンタルヘルスの問題で、感情知性の問題っていうのは、これから大きな闇を抱えたまま、えーバーチャルな世界とリアルな世界の両方を行き来する人間の将来に関わってくるんではないかと思っています。そういう中で、このほどほどというのをいかに支援するかという意味で、エンハンスメントっていうのは、まさに医療の分野では薬やサプリメントや、あるいは体が不自由な方が、何か、義肢とか、プロテーゼをつけることによって、健常な人と同じような、状況下で、仕事をすることができる、生活することができるという、そういったエンハンスメントもあれば、 美容整形とか、あるいは集中力を高めるためにそういった薬をサプリメントとして服用するといった、そういったことも出てきています。まさに社会のそういったサービスを利用することっていうのが、ステークホルダーって言い方をしますけれども、消費者が望めばそれに応えるのが良きことであるという社会の中で、セルフメディケーションであったり、セルフエンハンスメントであったり、より強く、より美しく、より優秀に、より強化された私、不老長寿の私まで行ってしまうかもしれません。そういった欲望が増殖していく、そういう社会が訪れてこようとしているときに、私たちがほどほど適切であること、そういうことをどうやって知っていったらいいのか。このことがおそらく AI 倫理、あるいは医療倫理というふうに言ったときに、その奥にあって、倫理の倫理とも言うべき、メタ倫理、人が生きる道とでも言いましょうか、そういった倫理が実は問われているんではないかというふうに思っております。今日はですね、特にメンタルヘルスの観点からの藤原先生のお話と、私のエンハンスメントの、境界をどこに人間は倫理として立てることが可能かという議論、そこで噛み合うような形で構成させていただきました。藤原先生の話聞いていて、一つだけ私は先ほどの話にも関連するんですけど、ほどほどっていうのをどうこれから測定し、支援していくのかっていうのが、我々のチームにとっての大きな課題にもなる点だと思いますが、そのあたりについて何か現時点で、思うところなどお聞かせいただければと思います。いかがでしょう。
はい、ありがとうございます。本当にこのレトリックの遊びみたいなお返事になっちゃうんですけど、この AI に関する企画だけにですね、その点を AI 的に解くというのは、まず一つ真面目なお答えになろうかなと思います。つまり、そのデータの蓄積に伴いまして、何を最適とするかというモデル作りは非常に難しいものがあると思うんですけれども、そのモデルの確率を持って蓄積するデータでどんどん深層学習が進めば、およそこの辺がよかろうと。例えば週2回ぐらいの1回の時間、このぐらいのメッツ数の運動だったりという運動習慣が導き出せたりとか、そのインターネットの使い方についてもそうですね、接続時間がどのくらいで、その使用の種類ごとにちょっとやっぱり調べる必要があろうというのは、先ほどプレゼンの中でもお話しさせていただきましたけれども、およそ SNS はこのぐらいの使い方で、仕事に関するメール等の業務にはこのくらいでというのがあぶり出されてくる可能性は十分にあろうかなと思います。ただし、一方ではこれは鈴木先生のご専門のところというか、なんというか、自弁的にしっかり考えていかないといけないと思うんですけれども、ほどほどというのが、いわゆるつまり儒教思想的に言うところの、孔子で言うところの中庸ということと、古くアリストテレス学派でいうところの、ニコマコス的な倫理学でよるちょうどいいということは、だいぶそのありようと重み付けの仕方が違いますので、その辺も含めまして、ほどほどっていうのは何かということを十分に考えてモデル作りしていくということが、大きなテーマですが、取り組んでみたいなと思うところでございます。
ありがとうございました。まさにそのほどほどっていうのは最適化の問題も関係してきて、個別最適化って言ったときに、あるフレームの中での最適化でしかないという、この最適化の問題もですね、それを前提としているフレームをどこに取ってるかによって、最適化の中身が変わってくるというあたりで、最適化ということ自体も、あるいはほどほどということ自体も相対化しながらですね、私の触覚知性の話は今日は十分できなかったんですけれども、多分その中庸とか調和っていう問題に、西洋的な古代ギリシャの中でも、静的、つまりスタティックな調和と、それから動的、ダイナミックな調和っていうので、論争がありましたし、また東洋にはですね、中庸というところに、まさにその動きの中で、葛藤の中でうわっという調和 というものをどのようにして見出すかという文化伝統がございますので、そういった東洋と西洋の、歴史的な、思辨的なレベルで行われてきている、最適化をこう包むような、そのベースにあるようなものっていうのをこう相対化しつつ、少し、海外にも発信できるような、そういった翻訳装置を作っていくことができたらいいなというふうに思っています。はい。それでは今日の、オープンセミナーですが、これで、終わりにしたいと思います。また次回のオープンセミナーでお会いしたいと思います。本日はご清聴いただきまして誠にありがとうございます。厚く御礼申し上げます。
ありがとうございました。
失礼します。